did end up, I think, mattering, even though it's kind of, it hurts to admit, is that like the resources that I got at Wisconsin versus a mid-major did end up like helping my development, and the type of level I was playing at helped me and like kind of get to that next level. So like I won't sugarcoat that part. Something that mattered a lot that I didn't care about and that I hate to admit as well is the first 3 years of my college career at Akron, and my first few years when I wasn't playing at Wisconsin was sitting behind Jordan Bloomer. Something that matters tenfold that I did not care about was how I was off the field, because I was so get to the next level, stepping stone, that I didn't, looking back, I could have been a 10 times better teammate. And that's the kind of thing that carries with you off the field to the pros, something that carries with you to the draft. Like people are going to ask around about you, and it's not going to be how many balls you kept out of the goal. A lot of times as a rookie, whether it's to transfer into a different school, to even go from high school to college, go from college to pros, people need someone good in the locker room. And they need, I hate when they call it personality hire, but they need, they need people who are good for the team. And that creates, like what Heather said, the family culture. And I did not think about that one bit going into college. And that is one of my biggest regrets, is that I wish I could have been the type of teammate that people needed me to be, and invested hard off the field as much as I did on the field.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, I made a living off being the personality hire, so I get it. Aaron, I'm going to go with you for the next one. Is what do you think you did in college that really helped you prepare for the professional level?
Something that I did in college to help me prepare professionally. I think what helped me prepare is from going from like that mid-major to Wisconsin, having all those kind of weird transitions in my 4, 5, 6 years, is learning to like know my worth, because there's going to be a million people in that process that are going to try to set it for you. So really just honing down on self-awareness, what I think my strengths are, what I think my weaknesses are. And that came from film, and that came from a lot of times where my ego got hurt because someone told me something about myself, and having to look back and reflect and know like, hey, I know this about myself, and having to set that intention every day going into training. Because at the pros, as a rookie, like I said, there's going to be a bunch of people who tell you your worth, and there's going to be even now media and reporters who want to chip in on that. And if you have a strong sense and foundation of your worth, whether you're at a mid-major, a Power 5, what is it now? Power 4, my bad.
Power 2.
Then Power 2. If you have that strong foundation, it's really going to help you on those long days where you feel like your worth is set in soccer.
Yeah. And just a quick plug, I think I always will go back on this because it was a lived and shared experience. It sounds like with you too, Aaron, is the mental side of the game is the most important. And Coach Chris here at TKI is doing a 4-week workshop for the mental side of the game to help you take your next steps, whether you're middle school or high school. It's called Bulletproof. It is in November and December. Make sure you check out the details on that. Okay.
Chris is my hero.
Yes. She's everyone's emotional support human. Heather, what do you think helped you in college to make the jump?
I honestly think it was my freshman year and sitting behind another keeper. Because like Aaron was talking about, with having to have those relationships off the field while still competing was massive for me, because I always talk about having a good GK unit and that kind of stuff, but it really taught me you have so much to grow and you haven't made it yet. And I tell recruits all the time. Like, if you have to sit a year in redshirt, I honestly don't see an issue with that. And it doesn't define who you are as a person, doesn't define who you are as a goalkeeper, and it doesn't mean that you're not good enough. I sat behind a goalkeeper who was SEC Goalkeeper of the Year. So instead of taking it as I'm not playing and everything's the worst, I took it as I have so much of a resource to look at right now. She clearly knows what she's doing. She's recognized, like, what can I learn from her game to then, like, adapt into my game? Like, how much of a sponge can I be of the people around me, whether or not I think that they're the best goalkeeper in the world or not? I think no matter what, every goalkeeper has something that you can learn something from, and that you can adapt towards your game. And it's just really the mentality of, are you willing to adapt that? And then the next year, going into a situation where I wasn't given the spot and I had actually lost the spot for 2 games. And it taught me, like, no matter how good you think you are, no matter what work you've put in, like, it's about how do you react from that. And I just, like, clearly remember when I wasn't playing and when I had told I wasn't going to play, I had this one game where they had told us that you two are really, really close. She has better feet than you, Heather. You need to fix that. I said, okay. I went every single day and trained on my feet. Then they told me that since we're competing each and every week, like, whoever does better that week is going to play. And the other goalkeeper had been kind of hurt, so, like, wasn't really training much that week. So I came into the game thinking I was going to play. So excited. I was going to get my first, like, ever true game. And then warm up happens and I see they're warming her up instead. And in that moment, I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, I wanted to throw a fit. Like, I was like, I want to be a child right now. I want to throw a fit. But I didn't. And I remember specifically being like, you know what, this is your time to show that you are a true teammate. You are a true friend, because she was my friend. So in that moment, I was like, suck up your pride. You're fine. I, like, was the loudest on the bench that whole entire game. It was a bit of, like, fake it till you make it, because obviously I was upset, but I don't want my team to fail. Because, like, no matter what, you want to beat someone out being the best version of you. You don't want to beat someone out because someone got hurt, or you don't want to beat someone out because, like, you're being petty. Like, that's just the worst way to want to win a spot. So I was like, I want her to play the best ever so that I can potentially, like, win the spot. And after the game, I cried in the locker room because I was so upset. And I had then gotten pulled into a meeting. They're like, you need to be a better teammate. You need to work harder in training. And that week of training, I feel like just flipped everything for me. I came in with intentions. I came in with, if I don't play this weekend, how am I acting during the week? Like, how am I? And after that, I started and played every single game, practically. There's a bit of injuries in some parts, but I think if it weren't for that, like, right now I'm in a situation where I'm not playing. I'm potentially not traveling. Like, I obviously have 2 amazing goalkeepers in my unit. So, like, how can I be the best version of myself and still show my personality in this session, but then also still compete with them?
Yeah, that's great. Really great insight. I also have a follow-up question that's not on our itinerary, however, a very short answer. But if you could take your ideal perfect school, and maybe, you know, you had that in each of the schools that you finished at, your perfect college experience, what's one thing looking back that you're like, I would never sacrifice in making the decision to go there? And I'll go first, and it's an answer for me, but I would never sacrifice the level of education I got at Villanova and a coaching staff that really cared about my development as a person and player. Those are 2 things I would never sacrifice. But I would love to hear you guys' thoughts.
You stole my last answer, Jill, is that going from both schools, I would never sacrifice the amount of investment that Paula and Tim put into me. And they weren't the type to tell you, like, you know, you're this great keeper, you're this great person, blah, 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 which, like, I didn't need that. So, I mean, maybe some people did, but the amount of time they put into you, whether it was film, whether it was taking you after the game and just asking your opinion, whether it was trying a way to build out of the back that Paula didn't want to do, but you brought it up so she would try it in training. There was, like, countless moments that they developed me as a player and a person that I would not sacrifice. Another one is the goalkeepers. Heather touched on this in my unit. I want to say Wisconsin has sent like 3-4 keepers to the NWSL. I don't know what's going on there, but there always seems to be like 1 or 2 like really good keepers at a time. And there was 3 of us that were all like competing head to head every day. And like Heather said, looking back at it, it was draining. And sometimes I wasn't the best teammate because maybe other people's successes made me feel like I couldn't, like other people's successes defined me. But that taught me so many lessons, and it grew me so much so rapidly because you competing every day at that level, just I wouldn't sacrifice that, even though it was a hard task.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Keeper Institute podcast. My name is Tori Corsaro. I'm a strength and conditioning and goalkeeper coach here at the Keeper Institute and your host for today's show. The Keeper Institute is a unique goalkeeper training facility in New Jersey aimed at developing better goalkeepers and better people. On this podcast, we will be discussing all things goalkeeping, character development, and more. Welcome back to another episode of the Keeper Institute podcast. Bow, bow, bow.
Bow, bow, bow. Did you pronounce that
Keeper.
wrong?
I did. I stumbled on Keeper.
The steeper. Yeah, I like it.
Steeper Institute. Sometimes, your mouth gets dry and the words all stick together. I also had like this moment where I was like, I'm going to change up the intro and see what Jill does. And then I was like, I can't do it. I can't even do it. It's ingrained in my brain.
And then you got flustered and you chickened out.
Yeah. And then I said Steeper Institute.
Yep. It's like good and great. Yeah. Putting them all together for Mean Girls.
Yeah, it wasn't the best. But we're here now and we're back with another episode. And guess what we are?
What?
Excited to talk to him. Excited to talk to people.
We're always excited. Every episode. I am very excited about this topic because we're
passionate.
Yeah, we are passionate. Also, I'm actually pretty excited because we are doing this season with some more guests, which is awesome. We've had a few former players, interns, current players. I'm really excited about this season of the podcast. And I think we have some really neat topics that are going to be really relevant to no matter what level you play at, something that can help you. So
we're cooking. That's all you people need to know. We're cooking in the kitchen.
We are cooking. What's your favorite thing to cook? I know this isn't the question segment, but
I don't really like to cook. But
you have nothing?
If I have to cook, like pasta. I like to make homemade sauce. And I like to make homemade pasta like when I have the time.
Okay, I didn't know that about you, about the sauce.
Yeah, my dad taught me.
Okay, that's interesting. Cool. All right. Let's get into this. So we decided that we are going to do a podcast on the 3 most underrated aspects of goalkeeping, because most of the time people just want to talk about shot stopping, which is very important. It is, in essence, the main part of our job, right? But there are some other aspects of our job that can help us keep the ball at the back of the net better. So let's talk about those things and just attune your attention to some small little nuances of the game that are going to make a big impact. Small things, big impact.
Yup. And I'm passionate about this one. I think that number one, what might be one of my favorite things to talk about when it comes to goalkeeping, which is so funny because I didn't do it at all when I was playing, but in possession. That to me, underrated, and I think it's starting to become very valued, but underrated and underrepresented in training.
Totally. Here's the problem, in my opinion. Is I am tired of coaches saying, quote, they are good with their feet. What does that mean? Please explain that to me. In your opinion, Tori, let's have a little discussion. What would you say, quote, good with their feet means?
What do I think other people's opinion is?
My own. Yeah, go ahead, your own.
My own is that if you're good with your feet, it means that you are very proficient in scanning, you're able to solve and manipulate pressure, and you're comfortable finding a variety of passes.
Great. That is amazing. What I think people mean when they say, quote, good with their feet is that they can technically execute a bunch of deliveries, which is the final product. Again, we're going back to sometimes we just get so stuck on the final product, but we don't forget about the 3 to 4 steps before that.
Yeah.
And people say, quote, good with their feet is just meaning like, okay, they can clip a ball 30 yards. They can hit a driven ball 40 yards. Okay, that's all well and great. That is part of it. That's part of it. But you actually need to be able to get to that part. And sometimes that means you need to be able to solve pressure. That means you need to be able to scan to see where the space is so that you can present into it, move into it, touch into it, ask for the ball into it. You need to be able to scan for what's behind my 6. Because anybody could pass a ball to the 6. But what makes that pass impactful or effective is scanning for what's behind the 6 so that you know what type of pass to give the 6. Are you giving the 6 a pass so that they can turn? Are you giving them a ball they can bounce either to you or to the outside back? So the delivery is, I would say, 10% of the important part. And what happens before that, especially if you're a young player, the final piece is the delivery. Who cares about that? Let's talk about all the things that go before it, because over time you're going to get better with your delivery. Your delivery is going to get longer. You're going to have different action capacities, which is going to open up to even more options. But if you can't solve pressure, you can't hit those options, right? Well, I'm on a soapbox about this because I'm so passionate about it. And I think we can tackle this from 2 sides. We can, as coaches, put players in an environment where they're having to scan, where they're having to solve pressure more, where they're having to not necessarily work on their first touch, but work on and afford opportunities to be more intentional about their first touch. When I watch the NWSL, I would say 90% of the goalkeepers' first touch is simply to control the ball. Simply to control the ball. There are different things that you can do with your first touch. Control the ball is one of them, absolutely. But you could also escape pressure with your first touch. You could also attract pressure with your first touch. You could use your first touch to set you up for a pass that's going to be delivered over a longer space of distance, right? So we need to just get away from, I need to control the ball. Or another thing that we need to get away from is you need to know where you're going with the ball before you receive it. That is not true. You do not need to know where you're going to deliver the ball before you receive it. Sometimes, yes, you are given that opportunity for a one-touch pass that you can play before you receive it, right? Or yes, sometimes you do see, I want to play the 9, so I'm going to take my touch and play the 9. Absolutely. But there are times where the ball will come in and you can escape pressure. And you don't know who you're going to play it to, but you're going to escape pressure to give your team time to become an option. If no one becomes an option, you can still play it longer if you needed to, right? I think we need to change our language from clearance to pass, one-time clearance to one-time pass, right? First time pass. Not every time you play the ball in one touch is it a clearance. And not every time you play a longer ball is it a clearance. Like, let's restructure the way that we think about that, because guess what? We started off this podcast with, we want to help you protect the goal better. And we're going to give you these 3 things that is like the meat of our job. But these 3 little nuances are going to help you do that better. If you keep possession, your team is in attack mode and we're having to defend, right? By simply keeping possession, the other team doesn't have the ball. It makes it impossible for them to score without the ball, right? In possession, one of the other underrated aspects, we're going to give you 4. This kind of goes under in possession, is throwing. I think throwing is a skill set and a tool that people don't use enough. It's more accurate. You can do it really quickly. You can start counterattacks from throwing. You have a different type of varieties of throws, overarm, baseball, bowling, that can give an advantage to the receiver of your pass. How to throw better is just simply knowing your range. You don't know if you can get a ball somewhere because you don't know what your range is. So practicing it just to find out what's the distance that you can throw can be really helpful. Okay. I've talked for too long.
You're good. You're what did I say? You're cooking. I don't know.
We're cooking.
We're going to let the chefs in the kitchen do their job. I'm not going to I'm not going to micromanage it. All I have to say is in possession, one of my favorite things. I've said this before. I'll say it again because I think that in possession is becoming very, very valued from a goalkeeper. And I think everyone at all levels, no matter where they coach or where they play, youth to pro, are like valuing that a goalkeeper needs to be good with their feet. I'll give you the air quotes there. But you also have to let your goalkeeper try. You cannot get upset when they're taking on pressure and like, oh, that felt too risky, or when they're trying to play a through pass or they're doing something. It's got to be a conversation of like, okay, this fits in our style of play. Here's how I want you to play. And they need to know what you want from them in possession as well. But you also have to give them the space to try.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that just goes back to what does your training environment look like, right? I think too often we see goalkeeper training sessions on social media and stuff of passing to an open net with no pressure. What are you working on?
Yeah.
What are you working on? You're working on the execution of a delivery under no pressure, which is not game specific, is not helping anyone, right? You're not working on the decision of, well, do I pass it to this player or that player? Like sometimes you have to use mini goals for sure. But if we can, at least add pressure to that if they're going to still play to a mini goal, right? Secondary pressure, you can have someone in a secondary pressure defending 2 mini goals, so the goalkeeper has to decide which one to go to, right? It just, if we can't ask goalkeepers to do stuff in games that they're not doing consistently in training, it makes no sense. Isn't that what training is for? Isn't your practice supposed to reflect what their decisions might be in a game? I don't know.
Yeah.
Start there.
Yeah.
Right?
Couldn't agree more.
If your goalkeeper's not doing something in a game that you need them to do, let's reflect on that and see how much we're working on it at practice. Anyway.
Okay. We're moving on because we could do a whole podcast on this, and I'm pretty sure we have. But let's move on to number 2, vertical positioning. This is underrated, I think, because it plays a factor in lots of different areas, lots of different jobs of the goalkeeper, right? So it could be valued in possession. It could be valued with protecting the space. It can be valued with shot stopping and protecting the goal area. But it's important, and I think it's an area that like you don't really get taught much about when you're a youth goalkeeper. It's just like, hey, you got beat over your head. Make sure you can dive up. So I think that there's a lot more we could say about vertical positioning that could ultimately aid in the development of goalkeepers and their decisions.
Yeah, I think our principles of goalkeeping are something that help goalkeepers make decisions. And our first principle of goalkeeping out of possession is to prevent when you can and react when you must. So if I can prevent a shot, I'd much prefer to do that than react to a shot, right? And
For
simply by being connected to my back line and maybe a more advanced position on the field could deter the opponent from playing central threatening passes behind my center backs, because that's ultimately the most dangerous space on the field, is the space behind your center backs, right? So simply by being connected to them, I could potentially prevent that ball. And if they play a ball that, if they still see me and they play that ball, there's potential I could still come out and prevent that, right? Or by being connected to my back line and being a little bit higher, I also can support in possession, as well as maybe the opponent then is impacted by not playing in behind my center backs. Now maybe they play in behind my fullback, which is a much more favorable situation for me to deal with as a goalkeeper, because not only is it putting the attacker further from me, it's giving opportunity for my defense to get back and put pressure on the ball, or at least get into a central position to maybe deny passes as well across the face. So many, many benefits of being connected to my back line. Now, how do you decide where to be vertically? It depends on what your job is and based on where the ball is. So if the ball is in your attacking third and your team has the ball, your job is to communicate to limit the opponent's opportunities, right? So your countermeasures, organizing your rest defense. Your other job is to support the possession and protect the space behind. If you know that those are your 3 jobs and that protect the goal is not one of your jobs, you know that you can be slightly higher off your line. And I know that my skill set is different than your skill set, Tori. So our positions might be slightly different, right? But our jobs would probably remain the same. And having some awareness of like what feels comfortable to you and where you feel like you can stretch yourself could be really helpful.
Yeah. And it comes back to training, right? How am I working on it and how am I representing it in training? A lot of these decisions get made in games, so it's important that you're accurately representing that in training so that when it comes down to the game time, you have a general idea of where you want to get set, where you want to be, what job are you fulfilling in that moment.
Yeah. I also think too is like this is something we hear a lot at TKI is like, I need to work on balls shot over my head. And I'm like, okay, yeah, we certainly can work on that, right? We certainly can work on your decisions of whether you're going to catch or push it over the bar, no problem, right? But let's go under the hood. Let's figure out why you actually don't need to work on back to the bar, quote, back to the bar. You need to work on your vertical positioning because your vertical positioning is way too high. And your X factor, I'm sorry, is not over your head. Some people, their X factor is like, if you watch Jane Campbell, she plays so aggressively high off her line and it works for her. Like, but it's not going to work for Erin McKinney or Heather Hins. Like in the same training environment, it's not the same, right? So you have to be mindful of like, what is your X factor? What are you really good at? And what advantage is this giving me right now? What advantage is this giving me? And does the advantage outweigh the disadvantage? Right. So the advantage to being higher off your line when you're protecting the goal is those little slip balls in behind the back line that you can become more aggressive and come out quicker for. Right. But the disadvantage is that you're conceding space over your head. Which one falls in line with your skill set? Which one do you need? Which one is more advantageous to me in this moment? And that could also help you determine what your position, your vertical positioning should be in the whatever phase of game it is.
Preach.
All right. Our last one, Tor.
Last one. Underrated, honestly, in life, but it's patience. And I just want to start before I let you go. I think patience it's a virtue, right? So my mom always told me growing up. But also, it's not to be confused with like being slow or indecisive. I think sometimes when people like our goalkeepers here, I need you to be patient, like they think we want them to like wait and then make a decision. It's yeah, sometimes it looks like that, but a lot of times patience is just reading what's coming to you and not trying to like anticipate what might be.
Like cheating, you mean?
Yeah, like cheating or like trying to anticipate where I'm going to win the ball on a cross or like not just sprinting out on a 1v1 or just stopping on a 1v1, but finding somewhere in between. Like you can simultaneously, in my opinion, move quick and make a quick decision, but also be patient with your final action.
Yeah, for sure. I think I really like this element of the game. And like you said, just as a regular human being, is we want things and we want them now.
Yeah.
I want to be good with my left foot. I want it done yesterday, right? I want to get fit. I want it done yesterday. But that isn't really reality, right? And I think sometimes we want something so bad to happen overnight that we get frustrated when we don't necessarily see a lot of progress. And I think one way that we train at TKI is we don't do a bunch of announced technical work all the time. And I think that's an illusion for helping you get better. That's an illusion and it feels good and it feels more comfortable because you're like, oh yeah, I can low dive to my left when the coach tells me they're going to kick it there and I react, but it's not really reacting because you're reacting from already an anticipated like sense. And so actually there's resources that have been done, like tests and stuff that have been done that they did this thing with Goalkeeper. So they took they took a player and they told the goalkeeper, the attacker is going to shoot to your right-hand side. The attacker is going to shoot to your right-hand side. So the goalkeeper reacts, right? And then they did a test where the attacker hit it to the same exact place, but they told the goalkeeper the attacker can hit it anywhere. And so even though the attacker hit the ball in the same exact place, the movements from when they knew it was going there and the movements from when they didn't know it was going there were different. It wasn't the exact same movement. There was different movements. And so that when you train like that, it is an illusion of you actually getting better because you need to be able to see and your brain needs to link what it's seeing to what your final action is, right? So we need to have patience with that and that we're in this for the long term. Even someone like, Kaylin or, Casey Murphy, they're still improving and they're still getting better, but they're still in it for the long-term development. They're not in it for the short-term game. Like this is years and years and years and years still of them left to play and left to develop. And you have to be patient with that process, and you have to show yourself grace. And you also, celebrate your wins when they happen, but we can't expect ourselves to just get 1% better every single day. That's not possible, especially when you're at the highest level in the world or in our country. It's just not possible. We have to be consistently chipping away at that rock, and might not see any progress for 100 times, 100 training sessions, but that 101th, it's like, wow, it all came together and it's finally happening and it's emerging without the coach telling me where it's going to go. It's see it now played out in games. So not only from the technical, tactical aspect, Tori, of like what you're talking about, patience is like so important, but also just like in the training space too, like that patience is instrumental. I mean, you can see people in the NWSL, I've been in this league since the start of it, and you can see the people that have patience in their game, like Aubrey Kingsbury, who didn't play her first few years, who was a backup at Sky Blue, was a backup at Orlando for a couple of years. And then finally, after 3 years of sitting on the bench, gets her start and has played and been a consistent starter ever since. Like there's a lot of stories like that, but there's even more stories of people who are so frustrated that they're not playing, that they lose the opportunities to get better every day, to improve every day, to be in an environment every day, so that they just go somewhere else. They quit. They're done with soccer, whatever it might be, right? It's just because they haven't developed that patience and that grit and that resilience quite yet. And so if you're a young player listening to this, that could be really, really helpful for you, not just right now, but in 5 years' time when you get to college and maybe someone else is starting and you have to redshirt, or in 10 years' time when you go pro and your rookie season, you don't play one singular second in a game. Or when you're in the workforce and you feel like you earn something, but you have to wait and you have to be patient. And of course, you're still not content with like where you are if you have higher aspirations, but you're patient with your process, knowing that it takes time to develop these things. It takes time to be sometimes recognize that those improvements are happening. And I also just think it's a good way to face growth and development.
For sure. I couldn't agree more. And I think that I like that we hit both sides of it because, it goes into the tech tack. But I think even beyond that, we all agree that the mental side of the game is like the biggest thing that if we're talking undervalued, that's undervalued. And I think that we could all continue to grow in that. And I know you and I have discussed like our own journeys on here before, but if we had those resources and if we had someone tell us like, hey, you got to work on that mental side and you got to be more patient, like we probably would have felt more equipped for some of the stuff that we were going to have to handle throughout our career. So I just think that that's so important. If you take away nothing else from this podcast, like take that away, highlight that, underline it, put it in your notebook.
Mm-hmm. All right, Tori, you got a question for us?
Oh, I do. Jill, it's fall. And I like the fall. It reminds me of home, the changing of the season, the leaves, all of it. I also like all that comes with fall in terms of the food and the drink. So I need to know, and I stole this over from the Women on the Attacking Third podcast a little bit, but you a pumpkin spice girly? Like, do you want pumpkin spice coffee? Do you like pumpkin bread, pumpkin cookies? Where do you stand?
I know this is unpopular opinion, but I don't like pumpkin spice lattes.
Me either.
Okay. I also do not like pumpkin bread unless unless it has cream cheese frosting or chocolate and it's a little underdone.
Okay. So specific. I'm with you. I also don't really like pumpkin spice coffee or anything, but I love any kind of sweetie. That's my vice.
That's true.
I love pumpkin bread.
And pumpkin pie, do you like?
No, I don't like pie.
Yeah,
no pie for me.
Not for me.
No pie. I don't want any pie.
Okay. I do like a double layer pumpkin pie. I guess this goes with the cream cheese thing, but it's like pumpkin with pudding mixed in and Cool Whip, and it's frozen and you eat it cold. It's very good.
I like to feel it's pie crust. I don't like pie crust. So I would eat that. If
mine has graham cracker crust.
Oh, I'm into that. I could be into that.
Yeah.
All right.
I feel this way about a lot of things, like bananas. Like I love a banana, I do not like banana flavored candy.
Well,
It's
yeah.
weird, right? Like
I don't like that
Laffy
either.
Taffy banana. That's gross.
I don't
Anyway,
like that either. Not to yuck anyone else's yum, but
right.
we're here to let you know what we do and don't like. But Jill, are you gonna throw any surprise endings out here again, or are you done now?
No surprise endings.
Okay.
Just a quick reminder that you guys are cared for and that we care about you and we care about your journey and we want to help any person that we can. Anybody who is willing, who is curious, who has questions, who needs more support, who feels alone. I just really want to remind those people that like we're here and we want to support you. So reach out on social media. You can email us at our first initial last name at thekeeperinstitute.com. Anyway, just reach out and we're so willing to help you guys. And yeah, I wish we had more support when I was growing up. And please just don't hesitate to ask for your needs to be met.
For sure.
That's it.
Well, we'll catch you later.
Catch you later.